Hey, so I want to talk about nihilism. I think this is an interesting topic because it's the idea that nothing really matters. At least that's my understanding of it. And I understand why someone would feel that way. It makes complete sense. When you really think about the universe and existence and just everything, it can just seem like a bunch of meaningless things happening, especially when you incorporate the infinity aspect of it, where it sort of feels like there's no end, there's no real goal, no purpose. It just is kind of happening, and it's just going to keep happening. And it doesn't matter what you do. A lot of these people don't even believe in free will because, you can trace back all of your actions to some outside factor, almost like a domino effect. That domino didn't choose to fall down, it just simply had no other option. That's just what was always set in place, set in motion. Um, by that same logic, there really would be no meaning to anything because it's just things happening in the only way that they ever could. And it's happening for infinity. So it's an interesting conclusion to draw that nothing matters. And if that is not what nihilism is, let me know in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I've talked to people, I've looked it up. It's just you know, there's always the chance that I misunderstood some aspect of something. So I just want to put that out there. But I want to address this viewpoint and share my thoughts on it because I personally don't believe everything is meaningless, and I want to be able to explain why and address some of the arguments made against my viewpoint. So, the reason that I don't think everything is meaningless, which I think is an important thing to figure out, because before you can move forward in anything, whether it be your job, your relationship, your personal well being and mental health, like what is the point of doing any of these things if you don't think anything matters? So, this is an important issue to address. You have to first figure out whether or not things matter, and then figure out what you're going to do with that information once you figure out if things matter or not. So, one thing that I'm very passionate about is respecting other people's viewpoints. I think if we as adults still have not agreed on certain things, we should be willing to have discussions about it. Because so many people who disagree on things that are very popular disagreements, like religion, things like that, politics, these are things that we need to be able to step back and actually listen to the other person's perspective instead of just arrogantly yelling at the other person and telling them that they're wrong. It doesn't matter whether or not that's true. What matters is that we're adults. Excuse me, I just burped a little bit. And we need to be able to use logic. We need to be able to actually discuss these things with one another and use logic. And I'll grant you, sometimes the other person in the discussion is logic has left the building. There's absolutely nothing to be gained from interacting with them because they're not capable of having a logical discussion. And that is the kind of person that I'm advising you not to be. So you don't want to start thinking that way and start, you don't want to become that arrogant. So even if you are certain that you're right, you still have to be willing to just step back and be realistic, be logical. You don't want someone telling you this is the law, this is what you have to do, and this is why you should do it, but you don't really understand fully why it's there. You might want to dispute it and say, well, hold on, I don't know why that law exists. It doesn't make sense. And you should be allowed to do that. You should be allowed to make arguments. And if they can't convince you, if they just say, yeah, those are good arguments, but whatever, yeah, it's still my way or the highway, then that's an issue. So I am very passionate about arguing for things that I believe, and I think everyone should be given the chance to make a fair point. So I would never dismiss a nihilistic viewpoint as being wrong or anything. I would never condescend anyone who disagrees with me on anything, even if I'm like 100% certain that I'm right, because it just doesn't accomplish anything. Um, and I would hope that if I'm taking the time and effort to be logical in the way that I explain things, that other people can try that too. And if they don't, then I'll, just walk away from the situation because there's no point in arguing with a brick wall. But you just need to learn the difference and make sure that the brick wall is never you. So that's, you know, let's move on from that. That's all I wanted to say about that. Okay, so addressing some nihilistic arguments. The first one that I want to talk about is The idea that if everything is infinite, there's no goal. But let's look at the opposite of that, right? What happens if there is, an end to things? It's like, then what? The whole universe, everything that exists for a specific purpose. And then once that is achieved, then what happens? Everything just stops existing? I mean, if there was ever a point in time at all when things were just done existing, existence, as we know, existence entirely has just reached the end. There is no more reason for anything to exist at all. Then what would we have after that? We would have nothing. And if nothing exists at any point, it might as well have always existed, because something cannot come from nothing. So that means that if we ever reach a point where nothing exists, it's going to stay that way forever. And it might as well have always been that way. So that's why, by default, we have to believe things are infinite, because there is absolutely zero logic in suggesting that there used to be a time when nothing existed and that there eventually will be a time when nothing exists once again. You have to believe in one way or another that there was something that always existed, something that is beyond space and time, something that is truly infinite. And, believing anything else is just, you're not thinking. I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't make any sense. So, regardless of what you believe about, what exactly is infinite, whether it be the universe itself or some type of like super intelligent being that is beyond space and time, whatever it may be that you believe, there is, kind of an inevitability in drawing the conclusion that everything is infinite. So that sort of makes you wonder, like, well, then what's the point if everything's just going to keep going and going? Well, I would say if everything was eventually going to end, that would make me think, what is the point? If I believed that when I die, that's going to be it, I would think, well, then why bother existing in the first place? If all the people around me are the only, you say, well, but the future generations will remember you. But yeah, but they're going to die too. Ultimately, everything is going to end. And I think we can all intuitively agree that that doesn't make it meaningless. Even people who do believe things are meaningless still find themselves spending their time and energy um, doing things that matter. If you've ever seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, it came out in 2023, I think. Huge movie. A lot of people saw it. I think it won some awards. I just watched it for the first time recently, and I was stunned by how well it was made. And my favorite line in the movie, this guy was saying, "I feel useless alone," and the other person said, "We're all useless alone." Just the simplicity of that, really, I mean, because that kind of almost says, then you're not alone, because if we're all useless alone, then we're all going through the same thing. We all have that in common, and we all have each other. And why does that matter so much? Why does that, like, seem to feel so important? It almost made me cry when I heard that line, even though the context around it was very odd. But I won't give you any spoilers if you haven't seen the movie. um, but yeah, it's an interesting statement to just, because it's so simple, but it means so much to just tell someone that they're not alone, and that you don't have to be alone, that it's okay to feel useless alone, because you're really not. I don't believe anybody's alone. I have I can't talk. I have some spiritual beliefs. I think that we always have a support team, whether we can see it or not. And I don't believe that we're ever just completely by ourselves, just, taking shots in the dark. Um, there's always a little light if you're willing to see it. And why does that matter? I think it's because if you think of the universe, instead of saying, oh, well, everything is infinite and just a bunch of random events occurring, you have to understand that those events, in and of themselves, they are meaningless, so you're not entirely wrong, but there is another plane of existence beyond the physical universe of things, that you can witness and say, oh, well, this rock moved in this direction or something like that. There's another plane of existence, and that is energy. We are energy. Energy is behind everything in existence, and that has different vibrational frequencies. Some are, on one end and some are on a polar opposite end. So there's, it's like a scale of like which end of a vibrational frequency are you going to be vibrating at. That's the best way to put it. And you can call it high or low, dark or light. I don't really care, as long as you understand that there's polar opposite ends, and they kind of, ultimately circle back around and connect. Everything connects, and nothing could really exist without an opposite. So, I believe everything in existence has an equal opposite. Um, and I haven't really seen any evidence to contradict that belief. It's just something that I've noticed a few years ago. But what I find interesting about that is that it sort of takes you away from the idea that everything being infinite makes it meaningless, takes you away from the concept of space and time, and almost makes you realize that those two things in and of themselves are kind of an illusion. And what you really are, your physical body, all of the things that you look at and think of as the universe, it's all just kind of an illusion. And the real you is just energy. So for those of you who believe that that's kind of um, that what I'm saying is an illusion rather than the other way around. Instead of saying that everything else is an illusion, you're saying that my consciousness is an illusion. And, it's just sort of caused by a complex robotic situation going on inside my body. Um, I even had a friend tell me about how someone was able to genetically redesign an exact replica of a worm or something. And that was used as an argument to say that we can hypothetically, theoretically, recreate um, life, artificially. And I personally don't think that's possible, because when you actually look at the difference between something man-made and something that was just born, it's completely different. It's really just it's a completely different thing. It's a completely different energy, and you can just tell that there's something there. What we are cannot be replicated. So even though someone was able to do that with a worm, I don't know that that necessarily means that they actually successfully created, like, I don't know, a soul, because it was just a digital design, I think. And I don't see that as an argument against the existence of something beyond just our body, or the idea that our body is just all that we are, and that our consciousness, our ability to observe and be like an individual is just an illusion. It's a trick of the mind. It would be like a robot thinking that they're alive when in reality someone just designed them, and it's just sort of a series of complex programming. I completely understand that perspective. It's not something that I just don't get. It's not something that hasn't been explained to me enough. I've thought about it plenty, but I've just seen too much evidence that there's more than just the body. And I don't even need to get into that. It's very personal, and if you have come to that conclusion on your own, that's your own journey. I can't force you to figure that out. But what I can tell you is that there is no evidence to, suggest that there's nothing other than, you know, what we have. Because if you look into the study of consciousness, it's considered advanced science. If you try to study anything about, like, what, like life after death, or just what are we, what is consciousness, what is all of this, you'll realize that there is still a lot of debate, because no one can really figure this out. It is a lot more complex than people want to believe. People think that if you believe in ghosts, that you're believing in something that's been scientifically disproven. It's not true. There's actually a ton of evidence in favor of the existence of ghosts, and there is zero evidence to suggest that they couldn't exist. It's just something that we sort of decided seems ridiculous, and we if you actually look into the science of it, there's nothing to suggest that it's not possible. It's just that people don't want to bother looking into it. So people who do try to look into it, they're doing it in a way that is, like I said, it's a personal thing, and they're gonna try and find ways to make it seem like it's something other than what it is. But I guarantee you, um, if they were actually willing to, open up to it, they would see that it's always around. Um, but that is neither here nor there. I don't want to have to convince you of this because I know that's a huge thing to convince someone of. So let's just focus more on, whether or not events have meaning. I think even if you don't believe that consciousness is anything more than an illusion and everything else is real, it's kind of irrelevant when you really think about it, because if your consciousness is just an illusion, you are just sort of a trick of the wiring in your brain, then that's really all that matters anyway. So we're either way, no matter how you think of it, everything in the physical world is not as important as what's going on in your head, in your consciousness. And we know intuitively that we all have shared experiences, and we all connect with each other in kind of a spiritual way. Even if you don't believe in spirituality, it's just kind of an inevitability that we have that connection, and it means more than anything physical. Can you explain why it's so important to have connections with other people? I mean, from a completely logical standpoint, where if you are thinking of things robotically, there are a lot of reasons to not do things that we all always feel inclined to do. It actually almost does make logical sense to be more nihilistic. And for that reason, logically, we shouldn't exist at all. So I would say if you really believe that nothing matters, I would say that if that was the case, then there would be nothing. The fact that anything exists at all is proof that there's something that's worth existing. And you could say, well, a bunch of humans running around as, I don't know, cavemen, just they had instincts, and you could say, well, that makes sense. That instinct, it's not about love, or it's not about spirituality. It's just a survival instinct. But why is survival important? All of the things that you blame on instincts, all of the things that you say are just like, oh, well, I can understand logically why someone would feel inclined to do that. Yeah, it's about survival. Why does survival matter? Why do we want to survive? It doesn't make any sense if everything is really meaningless. What even is life? Where did it come from? An amoeba somewhere or something? I don't know. Like, um, it's if you really trace life back to its origins, you would think logically that it would have no reason to exist in the first place. Whatever the source was would have no reason to exist at all. And you could say, but maybe it was an inevitability. Maybe it just happened because how could it not happen? Okay, well, that too also doesn't cancel it out, doesn't make it meaningless. Because if it was an inevitability, why? You know? Doesn't necessarily mean that just because it's inevitable that it's completely meaningless. This is a universe that we just got here and don't know anything, and we've only been learning from each other who don't know anything. So we, we can't be that dismissive of things. And I think that if you really want to believe that everything is meaningless, that's your prerogative, but I don't understand why you're here if that's what you really think. There must be some part of you that understands that there's a reason to exist, that there's a reason to do things, and that ultimately what it comes down to is the connections we have with other people, how we treat other people, how we treat ourselves, and how we evolve. And if you look at people, there are some people, regardless of age, there are older people who are clearly very unevolved, and there are young people who are like miles ahead of people that are, on their deathbeds. And that is proof that we are more than just here to just exist and then die. There is a series of evolution going on where some people are making really good decisions, and some people, even in the same circumstances, are making completely different decisions. So I think that there is a lot more going on than that. And I think what your role in that is to just focus on how you can evolve, focus on how you can grow, be more mindful, be more considerate, more compassionate, and just be willing to humble yourself and learn instead of believing that you already know everything. Because all that will really do is shut other people out. And when you isolate yourself like that, and you become kind of cynical, it's almost like you don't even know what you're doing anymore. And in my viewpoint, the scale of like energy vibrations, that's a very low vibrational energy that you've tapped into there. And then other dark energy can come around and try to manipulate you, and you are not going to have any awareness of it. And then you may find that you have been snuffing out the light from other people around you. We, as energy, it's like a food source. We can't just be starved. So we do need other energy. That is why the light is the food source. That high vibrational energy is the food source. And when you go low, you're going to feel starved, and you're going to start taking what isn't yours. And, from people who actually are earning it the natural way, instead of people who just operate on a place of fear. So I know that I just kind of threw a lot of that out there at the end, and I don't know that I necessarily earned it leading up to that, but those of you who watch me will understand what I'm saying. Those of you who are new, if anyone, if you're confused about that, or if you, I don't know, just think that it's bullshit or whatever, that's fine. But I just sometimes can't stop myself from talking. Um, and I do, if you haven't noticed, tend to be a little bit of an overthinker. But that's just because in this topic in particular, I take it very seriously, and I want to be considerate of everyone. So yeah, I think I'm going to wrap this up. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments. I appreciate every comment, every like, every subscription. Um, if you think that, you know, if I made any interesting points, let me know too, because I don't even know what I just said. Um, but yeah, I'll just think of something to say to wrap it up. Um, all you really have to do is listen to yourself, listen to your gut, and know that even if your consciousness and your existence was an illusion, it's sort of like who's to say which is which? Who's to say if a dream is real or if real life is real? Because both feel so real when they're happening. So what difference does it make if the physical world is an illusion or if your consciousness is an illusion? I think either way, there is a difference between what matters and what doesn't. And it's clear that either way, the physical world matters a lot less than what's going on in here. So even if you believe that that's just an illusion, a trick of the mind, which I promise you it isn't. I have seen like far too much evidence that that's not the case. But even if you believe that's the case, that doesn't mean that things don't matter. It just means that what matters is how we treat other people and how we treat ourselves. That we can stay on that higher vibration. And you'll notice it, you'll feel it. This is measurable. It's not something that you just have to take a shot in the dark. You will know if you walk into a room with people who are operating on a lower vibration. You will feel uncomfortable in there. You'll want to get out of there. If someone has it out for you, if someone hates you, you will feel that energy radiating off of them. You might not even be able to sleep at night if someone's, thinking about you at night, and just like things like that. This is stuff that you just can't make up. And you'll notice it if you just start paying attention. So that's all I ask. Just pay close attention to these things. Open up your mind, and you don't have to be cynical. Like I said, if this is truly what you believe, I don't think you would be here. So I don't think any life would be here. Nothing would really exist if that was the case. So yeah, let me know what you think. I'd be interested to hear any arguments. I know I probably didn't address everything that nihilists believe, but I it is what it is. Have a great rest of your day or night, and for those of you who don't know my schedule, I upload every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So I hope to see you next time I upload. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. Thank you.